Welcome to our story, family. Follow my story until the very end and comment on what city you are watching this from. The laughter spread softly around the table, but it was not the kind of laughter that warms a room. It was brittle, sharp, the kind that cuts. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. For an instant, the words just hung in the air, shimmering like heat on the asphalt. You will eat what the dog does not finish. I looked at my daughter-in-law, Lily Brooks, with her tight smile and bright eyes, carrying the satisfaction of someone who thought she had made the perfect joke. She was cutting her steak thick, juicy, marbled perfect. The kind of steak I had bought dozens of times for this family. The family I had helped stay afloat when Jason lost his job. The family whose children I had raised so they could work late. The family for which I had been nothing less than a walking safety net for over a decade. But now, at 73 years old, apparently I was only fit to eat leftovers no better than those of the family dog. A younger version of me might have laughed, pretending the sting was not real. Or maybe I would have smiled politely, swallowing the pain along with the cold roasted potatoes. But tonight something inside me refused. The comment did not just land, it took root like a thorn caught in fabric. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from clarity. I had been glossing over these little insults for years, telling myself they were not worth making a scene over, and every time the pile of swallowed words grew heavier. Tonight, I thought, putting my fork down carefully, maybe it is time I stop swallowing anything, whether it is leftovers or insults. I did not say a word. Instead, I reached across the table, my hand steady, and took the untouched half of Lily's steak right off her plate. Her eyes widened, her knife still in the air. Jason froze beside her, his wine glass halfway to his lips. Without breaking eye contact, I stood up. I walked over to the corner where Max, their golden retriever, lay curled up in his bed, and I gently placed the steak into his bowl. Max looked at me with happy confusion, sniffed the meat, and began to eat with a loud, wet enthusiasm that filled the sudden silence. When I returned to my seat, the air was thick enough to cut with the knife that Lily was still gripping. "Well," I said calmly, reaching for my water, "I guess now we will both find out how much the dog leaves for me." A muffled laugh escaped from the far end of the table. My 17-year-old granddaughter, Emma, perceptive beyond her years, quickly covered her mouth, but not before I caught the gleam of admiration in her eyes. Beside her, 12-year-old Tyler stared open-mouthed, his fork forgotten mid-bite. Lily's face flushed a deep crimson. "That was a joke," she managed to say, her voice cracking. "I know," I replied evenly, cutting my own potato. "So was mine." No one spoke for the rest of the meal. Only the scraping of silverware and Max's cheerful chewing filled the room. But under the table, Emma's foot found mine, giving it the smallest, most deliberate squeeze. And in that quiet moment, I knew she understood exactly what had just changed. I washed my hands slowly after dinner, letting the warm water run over my knuckles. From the kitchen window, I could see Jason loading plates into the dishwasher while Lily dried them with sharp, irritated movements. They were not speaking to each other, not really, but their silence was heavy. It was as if my little act at the table had been an earthquake neither of them was prepared for. I dried my hands, hung the towel neatly on its hook, and sat back down at the table where my coffee cup was still waiting. I was in no rush to leave, not yet. Let them feel the weight of my presence, the same way I had felt the weight of theirs all these years. Except mine had been heavy with obligation, theirs with silent judgment. As I stirred my coffee, I let my mind wander. There was a time when this kitchen, their kitchen, felt like an extension of my own. A time when I would arrive at dawn to make breakfast for the kids so Jason and Lily could sleep in after night shifts. I would spend my own pension on school uniforms, piano lessons, braces, and vacations that I was not even invited to join. Back then, I did not consider it a sacrifice. I considered it love, the natural duty of a mother and grandmother. After all, Jason was my only son. I raised him alone after his father, Robert, died of a heart attack when Jason was still in high school. Every victory he had felt like mine too. Every burden I took upon my shoulders without question. When he married Lily, I told myself that she just needed time to warm up to me. She was younger, ambitious, and sharp-tongued in a way that could be charming if you were not in the line of fire. At first, she seemed grateful for the down payment I gave them for their first house for the weekends I spent watching Emma and little Tyler, so they could travel for the grocery runs when money was tight. But gratitude is a fragile thing. At some point over the years, it turned into expectation. The thank yous stopped. The requests became instructions, and the instructions became assumptions. I remembered the first time I truly felt the shift. It was the Christmas I bought them a new washer and dryer after theirs broke down. Lily had opened the card, read the note, and said, "Good, we needed these." No hug, no smile, just those 4 sharp words before moving on to the next gift. I told myself it did not matter. After all, it is not about the thank yous. It is about helping family. But now, as I sat in their dining room with the echo of her comment about the dog's leftovers still ringing in my ears, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake by letting those moments pass without challenging them. Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair down now, wearing the oversized sweater I had bought her last winter. She gave me a quick, almost conspiratorial smile and slid into the seat next to me. "Grandma," she said in a whisper that only I could hear, "that was the best thing I have ever seen you do." I raised an eyebrow, sipping my coffee. "Feeding the dog his dinner," she smiled. "Feeding the dog his dinner." You should have seen her face. Her voice was quiet, but there was a bright gleam in her eyes, something that told me she understood exactly what that moment meant, even if the rest of them pretended otherwise. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "you have to speak a language people understand." Emma's smile faded into something softer. "They should not speak to you like that." Her words warmed me, but they also cut me deeply because Emma was 17 years old, still young enough to see injustice clearly, but old enough to recognize it when it became part of the fabric of everyday life. And she was right. They should not speak to me like that. They should not treat me like that. Lily's voice floated in from the kitchen. "Jason, your mother is still here." The tone was polite enough, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. A subtle push toward the door. I set down my coffee. "Well, I should get going." I told Emma, though neither of us moved right away. She reached under the table again and gave my hand a quick squeeze before standing up. In the hallway, I grabbed my coat from the rack. Jason walked me to the door, his smile stiff. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said, as if we had just had a lovely evening. I looked at him for a long moment. My son, the little boy I once carried on my hip, now a man with fine lines around his eyes and a guardedness in his tone that I could no longer break through. "Good night, Jason," I said, simply stepping out into the crisp night air. The wind pulled at my scarf as I walked toward my car. In the quiet of the street, the absurdity of it all hit me. Years of age, years of bending over backward, and it had come down to this: a stake, a dog, and a line I had not realized I was waiting to cross. As I slid behind the wheel, I felt no regret, only a growing certainty that this was not going to be an isolated act of defiance. Tonight had simply been the opening move, and for the first time in a long time, I felt curious, almost eager to see what would happen when I stopped playing by their rules. The following afternoon, Emma showed up at my door unannounced. She was still wearing her school uniform plaid skirt, half-buttoned blazer, her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. "I told Mom I was going to Mia's house to study," she said, walking in before I could answer. "I needed to see you." I took her coat, hung it on the hook, and motioned toward the kitchen. She nodded, following me. "I have been thinking about what happened last night," she said as I filled the kettle. It was amazing, but it also made me realize how much you have put up with." I set 2 mugs on the table, trying to hide my smile. "You have been thinking?" "Yes." She leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Grandma, they do not appreciate you. They use you, and it is not fair. I mean, I knew it before, but last night it was so obvious. The way Mom looked at you." She broke off. Shaking her head, her words settled heavily between us. I had had these exact same thoughts countless times over the years, but hearing them from her was different. It was like having a mirror held up to me and realizing my reflection looked more tired than I had let myself admit. "I have allowed it," I said quietly, "for a long time. But you do not have to anymore." Emma's eyes searched mine. "You are not stuck. You could." She hesitated, looking almost guilty. "You could stop helping them so much. They would not treat you like this if they knew you could just walk away." I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because of her conviction. "It is not that easy, Emma. When you have spent years being the one who steps in, it is hard to take a step back." She sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Maybe it is hard, but it is not impossible. You have been there for them forever. Who has been there for you?" Her question landed like a pebble in a still pond, rippling outward. Who had been there for me? Not Jason, not in any real emotional way. Not Lily, not even Tyler, though he was still young enough to be excused from such a responsibility. "I guess," I said slowly, "the answer is you." Emma smiled faintly. "Then maybe it is time you start thinking about yourself, because they are not going to do it." The kettle whistled, and I poured the water into our mugs. I watched the steam rise, disappearing into the air, just like so many years I had poured into that household, vanishing without acknowledgement. "Is there something else?" Emma said, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Mom's business is not doing well. That marketing firm she started last year is struggling. She's been really stressed about it, but she will not admit it to anyone." I looked up, surprised. Lily had always projected an image of effortless success. "How do you know?" "I heard her on the phone with her sister. She invested a lot of money, her money, and now she is worried they might lose the house if things do not improve." Emma's eyes met mine. "I think that is why she's been so harsh lately. She is scared." This new information shifted something in my understanding. Not enough to excuse Lily's behavior, but enough to see it in a different light. Fear could make people lash out, especially at easy targets. "That does not make it right," Emma added quickly, as if reading my thoughts. "How she treats you, I mean." "No," I agreed. "It does not." We talked for another hour about her classes, her plans after graduation, the part-time job she was hoping to get at the local bookstore. But the undercurrent of the conversation never changed. She was worried about me, and maybe for the first time I was willing to admit that I should be worried about myself too. When she finally stood up to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. "You are stronger than you think, Grandma," she said over my shoulder. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, her words echoing in my head. Stronger than I think. Maybe it was time to find out if she was right. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, the darkness pressing in my mind, replaying an endless reel of moments I had let slide. Lily telling me my sweater was too old lady for the family Christmas photo. Jason asking for just a little loan and never mentioning it again. Birthdays where the kids opened my gifts and tossed them aside without a second glance. I had always told myself I did not care, that it was normal that family does not keep score. But lying there with the moonlight spilling across my bedroom ceiling, I realized it was not about keeping score. It was about respect, and somewhere along the line, mine had been quietly stripped away. I thought about what Emma had said. They are not going to think about you. She was right. When Robert died, I had filled the void with busyness. I had poured my time, my money, and my energy into Jason's family because I did not know what else to do with all that love and all that need to be useful. And maybe I had been afraid. Afraid that if I did not make myself indispensable, I would fade into the background, just another lonely widow nobody had time for. But now, after all these years, I could see the truth. I had not made myself indispensable. I had made myself invisible, except when they wanted something. I got out of bed, put on my robe, and headed to the kitchen. The clock on the wall read 2:14 in the morning. I put the kettle on even though I did not really want tea. I just needed something to do with my hands. I opened the drawer where I keep my important paperwork: bank statements, insurance documents, the deeds to my house. The folders were neat, labeled everything in its place. My eyes went to the small blue folder marked Family Assistance. It was thicker than the others. I pulled it out, sat at the table, and began flipping through it. There it was, in black and white. The $15,000 loan for Jason's car, the $8,000 for Lily's business course, thousands for summer camps, tuition fees, new appliances, vacation emergencies, line after line, year after year, each one a piece of myself I had handed over without hesitation. I stared at the totals. The figure was higher than I had ever let myself calculate before. By the time the kettle whistled, I had made my decision. It was not about revenge. It was not even about the stake. It was about stopping the slow erosion of my dignity. And that meant one thing. I needed to take back control of my money, my time, and my place in this family. I poured myself a cup of tea, but I did not drink it. I just sat there in silence, my hands wrapped around the warm mug, and began to plan. Tomorrow, I would start with the bank. The morning sunlight felt sharper than usual, cutting through the kitchen curtains as if it had something to prove. I had barely slept, but I was more awake than I had been in months. I dressed deliberately. Navy slacks, a crisp blouse, the sensible leather shoes I had worn to Robert's retirement party years ago. Clothes that made me feel grounded. I ate a light breakfast, not because I was hungry, but because I needed the ritual. At 9 o'clock sharp, I walked into the downtown branch of the bank I had been using since Jason was born. It was the same one where Robert and I had opened our first joint account, where we had deposited paychecks and withdrawn cash for family vacations. But this time, my business was entirely my own. A young man in a suit greeted me at the door. "Good morning, Mrs. Brooks. How can I help you today?" "I would like to speak to a personal banker," I said. My voice sounded calm, almost too calm. "It is about my accounts." Within minutes, I was sitting in a private office across from a woman in her 40s named Valerie, whose neat bun and polite smile told me she had seen all sorts of requests, though perhaps not exactly like this one. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her hands poised over her keyboard. "I want to cancel all automatic transfers to my son Jason's account," I said, "and I want to revoke the joint access he has to my savings." Her fingers hesitated over the keys. "All transfers." "Yes, each and every one. And I want that access removed today if possible." Valerie blinked, but she did not question me. "Certainly I can help with that. There will be a few forms to sign, and I will need to verify which accounts have linked permissions." I opened my purse and pulled out the blue folder I had studied last night. "I have listed them all for you," I said, sliding the paper across the desk. "And there are no exceptions." As Valerie reviewed the list, I felt a strange sensation. Not guilt, not even anger, but a kind of release. Like setting down a bag I had been carrying for so long that I had forgotten its weight. "These are significant amounts," she commented, scanning the page. "Some monthly, some quarterly. Are you sure you want to stop them all at once? I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. We went through each account one by one. Mortgage assistance, tuition payments, car insurance, credit card balances. I initialed and signed wherever necessary, the bold black ink stark against the paper. When we were finished, Valerie printed confirmation copies for me to keep. "All linked access has been removed," she said. "The transfers are canceled. There may be 1 or 2 payments already processing, but nothing else will go out after today." I slipped the papers back into my folder, then looked her in the eye. "Thank you. I would also like to open a new account, a trust account in the name of my granddaughter, Emma. I will be the trustee until she turns 25 years old." This time, Valerie's smile seemed warmer. Of course. That is a wonderful idea. Idiu, we spent the next 30 minutes setting up the account, arranging it so the funds were protected from any outside claims, including family. I transferred a sizable sum, more than enough to cover Emma's education and give her a secure start in life. By the time I stepped back out into the mid-morning air, I felt lighter, even though the sun was no softer. It struck me that this was the first financial decision I had made in years that was entirely about me or about someone I genuinely wanted to help without obligation or strings attached. My phone buzzed in my purse. Jason's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again, this time a text message. Mom, the bank says there is a problem with the transfers. Call me ASAP. I slid the phone back into my purse and kept walking toward the bus stop. Let him figure it out for himself. This morning, I had reclaimed something far more valuable than money, and I was not about to give it up again. From the bank, I walked directly to the office of Peter Hanley, the attorney who had managed my will for the past 15 years. The brass nameplate on the door looked the same as always, but I felt different, reaching for the handle. Peter greeted me warmly, his sandy hair now streaked with silver. "Catherine, it has been a long time. How are you?" "I have been better," I admitted, "but I am about to be a lot better." He raised an eyebrow and motioned for me to sit. "Sounds like we have business to discuss." I placed my folder on his desk. "I want to make changes to my will, significant changes, and I would like to set up a living trust for my granddaughter, Emma." Peter leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "All right, let us start with the will. What do you have in mind?" "Jason and his wife will no longer be my primary beneficiaries," I said plainly. "Emma will inherit the bulk of my estate, and the trust will ensure she has access when she is responsible enough to handle it." Peter studied me for a moment. "May I ask what brought about this change?" "They have shown me exactly how they value me," I replied, "and it is not for who I am, but for what I can give them." He did not press further, just nodded in that measured way good lawyers do when they know a client's mind is made up. "We will need to draft an amendment to the will and set up the trust documents. The trust will protect the assets from claims, even from family members, and allow you to control the distributions during your lifetime." "That is exactly what I want," I said. Over the next hour, we went through my assets, investments, and the house. Peter suggested language that would make my intentions bulletproof. No loopholes, no ambiguity. He also recommended naming a secondary trustee in case something happened to me before Emma reached the specified age. I chose my oldest friend, Janet Wallace, without hesitation. Janet had known me since we were both young mothers in the same block of townhouses. She had seen me at my best and my worst, and most importantly, she had never tried to take advantage of me. When the drafts of the documents were ready, Peter slid them across the desk. I read every line carefully before signing, my signature flowing more firmly than I expected. "Catherine," Peter said as he gathered the papers, "I have been in this business a long time. I have seen families torn apart over much less. Are you prepared for the fallout?" I met his eyes. "I have been living with the fallout for years. Peter, I just was not calling it by its name." He smiled faintly, perhaps with a touch of pride. "Then I will have everything finalized within the week. You will have certified copies for your records, and I will keep the originals." I thanked him and stepped back out into the midday sun, the city humming around me. It was strange. I had not realized how much space those unspoken resentments were taking up inside me until I started clearing them out. My phone buzzed again in my purse. This time, it was a string of messages from Jason. "Mom, what is going on? Why are the transfers blocked? The mortgage is due next week. We need to talk." I did not reply. Instead, I walked to the nearest cafe, ordered a sandwich and a coffee, and sat by the window where I could watch people walk by. I let myself enjoy the simple act of buying lunch without checking if there was enough left over to cover someone else's request. For once. The money in my account and the choices it represented were entirely my own. I did not know exactly how Jason and Lily would react when they realized these changes were not temporary, but I did know one thing. I was not going to back down, not this time. By the time I got home, the answering machine was flashing like a warning light. I almost laughed. I had not seen that little red flash go off that many times since Emma was a baby, and Jason used to call every night from college asking for just a little bit to help with rent. I pressed play. "Mom, it is Jason. I do not know what is going on, but the bank says you canceled the transfers. That has to be a mistake. Call me." "Mom, it is me again. Lily is furious. The mortgage is almost due and, look, can you just call? We need to figure this out before it becomes a huge problem." It is Lily. I think we should all have a calm adult conversation about what is bothering you. This is not how families handle things. Please call me. I watched. I deleted them all without listening to the rest. I was not ready. Not for explanations, not for arguments, and certainly not for the tone Lily used when she tried to wrap her demands in politeness. The next call came in live right after I sat down with a book. I saw Jason's name flash on the screen and let it ring. He called again and again, then Lily for the 6th call. I switched the phone to silent and placed it face down on the coffee table. It was a strange thing, ignoring them. For years, their calls, whether to check in or to ask for something, had felt like obligations I could not refuse. A reflex to answer to say yes to rearrange my day to accommodate their needs. But now the space between the rings felt like breathing room I never knew I was missing. Around 7 o'clock, the phone buzzed with a text message from Emma. "Grandma, Mom, and Dad are losing it. What happened? They are not telling me anything except that you have done something drastic. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a while before typing back. "I am fine, sweetheart. I will explain soon for now. Do not get dragged into their drama. Focus on your homework." Within seconds, she replied, "Okay, just wanted to make sure you were all right. I love you." It was the only message that made me smile that day. That evening, I called Janet. I had not told her about my plans before executing them, but now I needed someone who understood. "You did what?" she exclaimed after I explained. "Catherine Brooks, I never thought you had it in you." "Neither did I admitted. "But does it feel good?" "Of course it feels good," Janet said firmly. "You have been their ATM for years. It was about time you closed the bank." We talked for almost an hour. I told her about the dinner, about Emma's visit, about the changes to my will. Janet listened, occasionally chiming in with supportive comments or asking clarifying questions. Unlike most people, she did not try to talk me out of anything or suggest I was being too harsh. "What is your plan now?" she finally asked. "They are not going to let this go easily." "I know." I sighed. "I'm going to stand my ground. No more automatic payments, no more loans, no more being taken for granted. If they want a relationship with me, it has to be on different terms." "Good for you," Janet said. "And if you need backup, I am here. I have been waiting 20 years to tell Lily what I really think of her." I laughed. "Let us hope it does not come to that." "Oh, I do not know." Janet chuckled. "It might be fun." After we hung up, I felt more settled. Having Janet's support strengthened my resolve. I was not crazy or overreacting. I was finally standing up for myself. The next morning, I found Lily's car parked in front of my house. She was sitting in the driver's seat, typing on her phone, her sunglasses, hiding whatever expression she was wearing. I considered pretending I was not home, but then decided I did not care enough to hide. When I stepped out to get the mail, she rolled down her window. "Catherine," she said, with a voice sweet enough to make my teeth ache, "we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, sorting through the envelopes. "About the bank. The payments. Everything. I am sure this is just a misunderstanding. Jason says you have been upset lately. If something is bothering you, we can work it out. But cutting us off without a word, that is not fair." I looked at her over the edge of the electric bill in my hand. Lily, I have been more than fair for years. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You are making things harder than they need to be. I almost laughed. Funny, I was thinking the exact same thing about you. Her sunglasses tilted slightly as if she were studying me for cracks. Jason is under a lot of stress right now. The mortgage. The mortgage, I interrupted, is yours. So are the cars, the vacations, and the dinners out. I am done funding your lifestyle. Her mouth opened as if to protest, but I had already turned back toward my front door. I have things to do, I said over my shoulder. Drive safe. I shut the door before she could respond. For a long moment, I leaned against it, listening to the quiet ticking of the clock in the hallway. My heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit, but it was not from fear. It was from the thrill of finally saying no and meaning it. Through the front window, I saw Lily's car idle for another minute before driving away. The phone would ring again. The texts would keep coming, and sooner or later, Jason himself would show up. But when he did, I would be ready, because for the first time in years, I was not on the defensive. I was on my own ground. The unexpected ringing of the doorbell startled me late that afternoon. I looked through the peephole, surprised to see not Jason or Lily, but Tyler, my youngest grandson, standing on the porch with his backpack. I opened the door. Tyler, what are you doing here? He shifted from foot to foot. Can I come in, Grandma? I walked from the bus stop. I ushered him inside, concerned. Does your mother know you are here? He shook his head. I told her I was going to Jake's house to work on a science project. I led him into the kitchen where I got out cookies and milk without asking if he wanted them. Some traditions did not need questioning. What is going on, sweetheart? I asked as he dunked a chocolate chip cookie into his glass. Everyone is fighting, he said simply. Dad is yelling about money and Mom keeps saying he is being unreasonable. He looked up at me with those serious eyes that always seemed too old for his face. But I heard what she said to you at dinner about the dog food. It was not nice. My heart sank. No, it was not. I wanted to say something, but... He stopped staring at his milk. But sometimes it is hard to speak up. I finished for him. I understand. He nodded. Mom says you are punishing them, but I do not think that is true. Are you mad at them? I considered how to answer. Tyler was only 12 years old. Too young to be burdened with adult problems, but old enough to see through easy lies. I am disappointed, I said carefully. Sometimes adults do not treat each other with respect, and when that happens, things need to change. Like boundaries, he asked. We learned about that in health class. I smiled. Exactly like boundaries. I am setting some new ones with your parents. He seemed to consider this taking another cookie. That makes sense. Jake's mom says boundaries are important, especially with toxic people. I raised an eyebrow. Your parents are not toxic, Tyler. They have just gotten used to a certain way of doing things, and now I am changing the rules. It is uncomfortable for everyone. Except you, he pointed out. You seem different, like stronger or something. Out of the mouths of babes. Maybe I am, I admitted. Now we should call your mother before she starts to worry. Can I stay a little longer? He pleaded. Please, I brought my homework. I hesitated. Then I nodded. 1 hour. Then I will drive you home. While Tyler spread his math worksheets across the kitchen table, I sent a brief text to Lily letting her know he was with me and safe. Her immediate reply was clipped. He should have asked permission first. I did not reply. Instead, I sat across from my grandson and helped him with his fractions, feeling a different kind of peace than I had known in years. Not the peace of acquiescence, but the peace of standing firmly in my own truth, even as the storm continued gathering around me. Later, as I drove Tyler home, he asked quietly, "Will you still come to my baseball games?" "Of course I will," I assured him. "This is not about you or Emma. I will always be there for the two of you." He nodded, satisfied. good because I hit a home run last week and nobody cheers as loud as you do." When we pulled into their driveway, Lily was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed. I braced myself for a confrontation, but to my surprise, she simply thanked me for bringing him home and ushered him inside without further comment. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror to see Tyler waving from the front window. I waved back, realizing that in all my planning, I had not considered how my actions would affect my grandchildren. I would need to make sure they knew, without a doubt, that my love for them remained unchanged, even as everything else shifted around us. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad creating a detailed plan for the weeks ahead. I listed all the automatic payments I had canceled, all the regular gifts that would no longer happen, and all the boundaries I intended to maintain. I also made a separate list of things I would continue to do directly for Emma and Tyler: attend their events, spend one-on-one time with them, even set up separate accounts for small expenses they might have. This was not about cutting them off. It was about redirecting my support in healthier ways. The doorbell rang again, and this time, when I looked through the peephole, I saw a familiar face I had not expected. My late husband's closest friend and our family doctor for decades stood on my porch, holding a small plant. I opened the door, genuinely surprised. "Martin, what brings you here?" He smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in that way that had always made patients trust him immediately. "I ran into Janet at the grocery store. She mentioned you might need a friendly face." I shook my head, smiling despite myself. Janet never could keep anything to herself. "She is worried about you," he said, handing me the plant. "And honestly, so am I. May I come in?" I stepped aside to let him in, touched by the gesture. Martin had remained a peripheral figure in my life after Robert died, sending Christmas cards, attending major celebrations, occasionally checking in. But we had never been particularly close on our own. "It is just a little piece, Lily," he said, nodding toward the plant. "Low maintenance. Hard to kill. Rather like you, I suspect." I laughed, leading him into the living room. "I will take that as a compliment." "It was meant as one," he assured me, settling into an armchair. "So Janet tells me you are finally standing up to that daughter-in-law of yours." I sighed. "She did not waste any time, did she?" "She is protective of you," Martin said. "She always has been, and frankly, I have been waiting for this day for years." I looked at him, surprised. "You have been?" He nodded, his expression serious. "Catherine, I have watched you pour yourself into Jason's family since Robert died. I have watched you cancel your own plans to babysit, write checks you probably should not have written, and accept less than respectful treatment in return. Robert would have hated seeing you diminished like that." His words hit home in a way not even Janet's had. The mention of what Robert would have thought brought a lump to my throat. "I did not realize you were paying such close attention," I said quietly. "I promised Robert I would look out for you." He replied simply, "I have always felt I could have done more." We talked for over an hour, about Robert, about Jason, about the changes I was making. Martin listened carefully, occasionally offering insights from his years of observing family dynamics as a doctor. Unlike Janet's fiery support, his was steadier, more measured, but no less affirming. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. "Catherine, I know this is not easy. Family conflicts never are. But for what it is worth, I think you are doing the right thing. And if you ever need anything, advice, support, or just someone to have dinner with occasionally, I am retired now. I have the time." I smiled. "I might just take you up on that." "I hope you do," he said. And for a moment, I thought I saw something more than friendly concern in his eyes. But then he was gone, leaving me with a peace, Lily, and the unexpected comfort of knowing I had allies I had not even counted on. That night, as I prepared for bed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Determination, certainly. Anxiety about the confrontations still to come. But also, for the first time in years, a sense of possibility. as if by cutting away the dead weight of obligation, I had created space for something new to grow. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I really looked and saw a woman I had almost forgotten. Not just a grandmother, not just a widow, not just a checkbook with legs. A whole person with desires and needs of her own. A person worthy of respect. "Hello, Catherine," I whispered to my reflection. "Welcome back." Jason did not take long to make his move. It was late Saturday morning, and I had just finished tidying the kitchen when I heard the crunch of tires in my driveway. I peeked through the curtains. Jason's SUV was alone. That in itself was unusual. Lily preferred to be part of any major discussion, especially if it involved money. He did not bother knocking softly. 3 sharp raps shook the door, followed by his voice. "Mom, it is me. We need to talk." I took my time walking to the door, as if I had not already been there. When I opened it, he stood with his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, his expression a mix of irritation and forced concern. "Can I come in?" he asked. "You may," I said, stepping aside. "Whether you should is another question." He frowned but walked in, looking around as if he expected the place to look different. As if cutting him off financially would somehow redecorate my living room. "All right." He began dropping onto the armchair uninvited. "Well, what is going on?" "The bank says you canceled all the transfers. Our mortgage payment bounced yesterday. I had to move money around to cover it." "Then I suppose it is a good thing you had money to move," I said, settling onto the couch. He exhaled sharply. "Mom, come on. If you were upset about something, you could have just told me. This drastic act does not help anyone." "It helps me," I said calmly. "It helps me remember that I am not your safety net, your emergency fund, or your ATM." His jaw tightened. "This is about the other night, isn't it? Lily's comment was a joke, Mom." I let out a quiet laugh. "If it were just one night, Jason, you might be right. But it is not. It is years of being treated as if my value is measured only by what I can give you. Years of disrespect, some subtle, some not. That dinner was simply the straw that broke the camel's back." He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "You are blowing things out of proportion. We have always appreciated what you have done for us. Have you?" I asked, leaning forward. "When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing? Not because you needed something. Not because a payment was due, just because you cared." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I saw the flash of defensiveness cross his face, followed by the telltale look of someone searching for a safe answer and finding none. "I am not saying we have been perfect," he finally said, "but family is supposed to help each other. You taught me that. And I am still willing to help when it is necessary," I said. "But necessary does not mean bailing you out every single month because you cannot live within your means. It does not mean paying for luxuries while being told to be more frugal with my own needs." He rubbed his face with both hands. "This is going to put us in a tight spot, Mom. We have obligations." "I do too," I interjected. "Obligaciones to myself, to my peace of mind. I have spent years putting yours ahead of mine. That ends right now." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Jason stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to push harder or retreat. In the end, he stood up abruptly. "I think you are making a mistake, but I guess it is your choice." "You are right," I said. "It is." He headed for the door without another word. I followed him to the threshold, watching him climb into the SUV. He did not look back before reversing out of the driveway. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. Not because I was shaken, though my hands were trembling slightly, but because I knew this would not be the last confrontation. Lily would try again. Jason, too. They would test the boundaries I had just established, looking for any weakness. But they were going to find a different Catherine now, one who knew exactly where her limits were. one who had no intention of ever moving them again. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of tranquility I had not felt in years. No early phone calls, no urgent requests, no reminders of bills that needed paying. I made coffee. I fed the birds in the yard and sat by the kitchen window as if nothing in the world was pressuring me for an answer. The peace lasted until mid-afternoon when the inevitable call arrived. This time, it was not Jason. Lily stood on my porch in a tailored coat, her hair perfectly straight, a bright red scarf knotted at her neck. She wore the expression of someone who had rehearsed her lines on the drive over. "Catherine," she said smoothly, "I hope I am not interrupting." "You are," I replied, "but you might as well come in." Her heels clicked against my hardwood floor as she stepped inside, looking around the room as if she were inspecting for dust. She did not sit until I did, and then she crossed her legs, leaning forward with practiced warmth. "I am here because I think we can clear all of this up," she began. "There is no need for tension between us. Jason tells me you have been feeling unappreciated." "That is one way to put it," I said, folding my hands in my lap. She gave a small laugh as if to soften the mood. "Families have misunderstandings. We have all been under stress, and sometimes words come out wrong. About the other night," I held up a hand. "Lily, I am not interested in excuses. What you said was deliberate. But it is not just about one comment. It is about years of treating me as if my only worth lies in my wallet or my calendar." Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "You have always been generous, Catherine. We have never taken that for granted." "Yes, you have," I said flatly. She blinked, taken aback by the bluntness. "I have paid your mortgage when Jason's hours were cut. I have covered vacations, cars, private school tuition, business expenses, all without complaining. And not once in the last 5 years have you invited me to your home without expecting something in return. Not once have you asked how I am doing without it leading to a request." Lily shifted in her chair. "We appreciate everything you have done." "Do you? Because appreciation does not sound like telling me I will eat what the dog leaves. It does not look like excluding me from vacations I paid for, and it certainly does not feel like respect." For the first time since she had arrived, Lily's composure cracked. A faint flush crept up her neck. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "Maybe we have been careless, but cutting us off completely, that is punishing everyone for 1 or 2 bad moments." I leaned back, my tone calm. "It is not a punishment. They are boundaries. You have lived without them for far too long, and I have lived without them for even longer. That is over." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Jason is worried about the mortgage and the car payment. We have obligations." "I do too," I said, repeating the exact words I had spoken to Jason. "Obligations to myself, and I am finally honoring them." We sat in silence for a moment, the ticking of the clock in the hallway filling the space. Lily uncrossed and recrossed her legs, clearly realizing that her usual tactics were not working. "Think about it," she said at last, standing up. "Do not make a decision you cannot reverse." I stood up as well, walking her to the door. "I already have." She paused on the threshold as if waiting for a last-second change of heart. I gave her none. When the door clicked shut behind her, I did not feel triumphant, just steady. That conversation had not been about winning. It had been about making it crystal clear that the rules had changed, and no amount of charm or pressure was going to change them back. I knew this was not the end. If anything, it was the halfway mark of a battle I had not planned, but for which I was now completely prepared. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one holding the high ground. By Monday morning, the family rumor mill was in full swing. I found out when my old friend Janet called, her voice brimming with that mix of concern and thinly veiled curiosity that only a lifelong friend can pull off. "Catherine, I just ran into your cousin Ruth at the market," she said without preamble. "She tells me Jason and Lily are telling people you lost your temper and cut them off over a misunderstanding." I let out a dry laugh. "Is that what they are calling it?" "That is the polite version," Janet replied. "Ruth hinted that they are making it sound like you are being irrational, that you are, and I quote, not acting like yourself lately." I shook my head, even though she could not see me. "No, Janet, I am more myself than I have been in years." Her voice softened. "I figured as much. I told Ruth she would be smart to keep her opinions to herself unless she knows the whole story. But you know how family gossip works. Will they twist this into something it is not?" "I am counting on it," I said. "It will keep them talking and away from my door, at least for a while." We chatted a bit longer, and after hanging up, I could not help but think about how quickly they had spun the narrative. It was almost impressive. In less than a week, I had gone from generous matriarch to cold-hearted villain in their version of events. Later that day, I stopped at the grocery store. In the produce aisle, I spotted Lily's sister, Patricia. We'd never been close, but she had always been cordial. Today, however, her greeting was frosty, her smile thin. "I hear you have been making waves," she said, picking up a bag of apples from the display. "I suppose you could call it that," I replied. She gave a small shrug. "Family drama is not my business, but you know how it looks when you pull the rug out from under your own son." I looked directly at her. "If you are going to judge Patricia, at least judge the whole picture, not just the frame they handed you." She did not have much to say after that. When I got home, there was a message from Emma waiting on my phone. "Grandma people are talking. Mom is making it sound like you had some sort of breakdown. I know it is not true, but I am just warning you." I sat down and typed back, "Let them talk, sweetheart. The truth does not need to shout to be heard." Emma's reply came almost instantly. "Still, I am proud of you." That evening, Janet came over with a pie. Blueberry, my favorite. We settled at the kitchen table just like we had hundreds of times before. "So," she said between bites, "what is your plan if they keep trying to twist the story?" "I do not need a plan," I said. "They can say whatever they want. The people who matter will know the truth or take the time to find it. The rest, well, their opinions are no longer my problem." Janet studied me for a moment. You sound lighter." "I am," I admitted. "Do you know what it feels like to stop waiting for someone else's gratitude, to finally realize you do not need their approval to breathe?" She smiled. "Sounds like freedom to me." We spent the next hour talking about ordinary things. The weather, the garden, the latest mystery novel she was reading, and somewhere in that normal conversation, I felt the tight knot in my chest loosen a little more. I knew the gossip would continue. I knew there would be more attempts to fix me, more half-hearted reconciliations that were really just about regaining access to what I had taken away. But I also knew I had crossed a line I would never cross back over. Let them talk. Let them speculate. I was finally living on my own terms, and I fully intended to keep it that way. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from Dr. Reynolds. "Catherine, I hope I am not bothering you." His warm voice came through the line. "I was wondering if you might be free for lunch today. There is a new bistro downtown I have been wanting to try." The invitation caught me off guard. Lunch, today. "Unless you have other plans," he added quickly. "I completely understand if you do." No plans," I assured him. "Lunch would be lovely." We agreed to meet at noon, and after hanging up, I found myself staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror with a kind of bewilderment. Was this a date or just a friendly meal? Either way, it had been years since I had had lunch with anyone other than Janet, and certainly not with a man. I changed my outfit twice before deciding on a blue dress I had bought years ago but rarely worn. It was not fancy, but it made my eyes look brighter. Or at least, that is what Robert had always said. The bistro was small and elegant with white tablecloths and fresh flowers on every table. Martin had insisted I call him by his first name. He was waiting when I arrived, looking distinguished in a gray blazer. "Catherine," he said, standing up as I approached. "You look wonderful." I felt a rush of warmth at the compliment. "Thank you, you too." During lunch, we talked about everything except my situation with Jason and Lily. Martin told me about his retirement plans, about the book he was writing on rural medicine, about the hiking trail he had discovered just outside the city. I found myself laughing more than I had in months. "You know," he said as we shared a chocolate dessert, "I have been wanting to ask you to lunch for years." I looked up, surprised. "Years? Why didn't you—" His eyes were kind but held a hint of something more. Timing, I suppose, and a certain cowardice on my part. I did not want to overstep. Overstep what boundaries? He said simply, "First there was your marriage to Robert, which I deeply respected. Then after his passing, there was your mourning. And after that, it seemed like you were always so wrapped up in Jason's family, I was not sure there was room for anyone else." I put down my fork, absorbing his words. "And now," he said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth, "it seems you are reclaiming your life. I thought maybe there might be room in it for an old friend who would like to be a new one too." The directness of his statement was refreshing after years of dancing around Jason and Lily's agendas. "I think there just might be," I said softly. As we left, Martin took my hand briefly. "May I call you again?" "I would like that," I replied, and I meant it. I drove home with a strange light feeling in my chest. It was not just Martin's attention, although that was certainly flattering. It was the realization that by cutting one set of ties, I had opened myself up to new possibilities. Possibilities that had nothing to do with being a grandmother or a financial support system, and everything to do with just being Catherine. The moment of peace was short-lived. When I pulled into my driveway, Jason's car was already there, and he was sitting on my front step wearing an expression that told me this was no social visit. I sighed as I got out of the car. "Jason, this is becoming a habit." He stood up, his face tight. "We need to talk, Mom. Really talk." "Ah," I nodded, unlocking the front door. "Tyler told us he came to see you." "He did. He was upset by all the fighting at home." Jason followed me inside, his movements agitated. "He should not have gone behind our backs, and you should have called us immediately." I texted Lily to let her know he was safe, I said, putting down my purse. "And he is not a toddler, Jason. He is 12 years old and capable of making decisions about who he wants to talk to." "That is not the point," he said, pacing across my living room. "The point is that this whole situation is affecting the kids now. Emma has been sulking around the house, barely speaking to us. Tyler is asking questions we do not know how to answer. And Lily," he stopped, running a hand through his hair, "Lily is threatening to move us to Arizona." That caught my attention. Arizona, why? "Her sister lives there," he said, sounding exhausted. "She thinks we need a fresh start, away from complications." The implication was clear, away from me. "And what do you think?" I asked quietly. He sank onto the couch, suddenly looking his age. "I think we are drowning, Mom. The mortgage is just the beginning. There are credit card bills, car payments, the kids' activities. We have been living beyond our means for years, and now it is all catching up to us." "And whose fault is that?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Jason looked up, his expression hardening. "That's not fair. You never said no. You never suggested we should cut back. You just kept giving and giving. How are we supposed to know it was too much?" I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "You are a grown man, Jason. You should not need your mother to tell you when you are spending too much." He stood up again, defensive. "Look, I did not come here to fight. I came to try and reach an agreement. We cannot lose the house, Mom. The kids are settled in school. They have friends, routines." "What exactly are you asking me for?" I said, though I already knew. "Just help with the mortgage," he said quickly. "Just until we can get back on our feet. We will cut back on everything else. I promise. No more vacations, no more dinners out. Lily is even talking about selling her car." I shook my head slowly. "No, Jason. Mom, please." "No," I repeated, firmer this time. "I am not going to bail you out again. Not because I do not love you, but because it does not help you in the long run. You need to figure this out on your own." His face flushed with anger. "So that is it. You are going to let us lose everything." "You will not lose everything," I said calmly. "You might lose some things you probably could not afford in the first place, but that is not the same as everything. The kids will adapt." I finished for him. "Children are resilient, especially when they have parents who are honest with them." Jason looked at me as if I were a stranger. Maybe I was. The mother he had known would have written a check by now. She would have done anything to spare him discomfort. "This is not like you," he said finally. "No," I agreed. "It is like the woman I should have been a long time ago." He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. I waited for the guilt to hit the overwhelming urge to call him back to fix everything, but it did not come. Instead, I felt a sad clarity. This had been a long time coming, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their own choices. Later that evening, Emma called. "Dad said you refused to help with the mortgage," she said without preamble. "That is right," I confirmed. There was a pause. "They are talking about selling the house, moving to Aunt Patricia's in Arizona until they can regroup, whatever that means." "How do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. "Honestly, I hate the idea. I would have to leave all my friends, start at a new school for my senior year, but—" She hesitated. "But part of me thinks maybe it is what they need. A reality check, you know." "I know exactly what you mean," I said. "Grandma," she said, dropping her voice to a whisper, "if they move, can I stay with you just until I graduate? Please." The request caught me off guard. "Have you spoken to your parents about this?" "Not yet. I wanted to ask you first. Would it be all right?" I thought about what it would mean to have a teenager in my quiet house, the potential conflict with Jason and Lily, the logistics of the school commute and daily routines. But I also thought about what it would mean for Emma to have stability in her final year of high school. "Yes," I said finally. "If that is what you want, and if your parents agree, you can stay with me." Her relief was audible. "Thank you. I will talk to them tonight. I do not think they will fight it much. One less expense for them, right?" The pragmatism in her voice made my heart ache. "Emma, I want you to know something. No matter what happens with your parents, with the house, with anything, you always have a place with me. Not because I am obligated, but because I want you in my life." "I know," she said softly. "That is why I asked." After we hung up, I sat in my living room contemplating the rapid changes happening in our family. Welcome to our story, family. It was not what I had expected when I took that steak from Lily's plate, but maybe it was necessary. Sometimes structures need to collapse before they can be rebuilt stronger. My phone vibrated with a text message from Martin. "I thoroughly enjoyed our lunch. I would love to take you to dinner this weekend. What do you say?" I smiled and typed back, "Yes." At least one thing was moving in a positive direction. The whispers had become little storms floating through the family tree. I could almost feel them gathering weight, circling around me without landing directly. It is the way people talk when they want you to hear, but do not have the courage to say it to your face. It started at the post office. I was in line to send a package to Emma, a small box of books I thought she might like, when I noticed a woman a few steps ahead turning to look at me. She was one of Jason's cousins by marriage, though I could not remember her name. She whispered something to the man next to her, and they both gave me that look, a mixture of pity and judgment. At the hardware store later, I ran into Henry, an old neighbor who once borrowed my ladder and kept it for 6 months. He gave me a half smile. "I heard there is trouble in paradise," he said, as if he expected me to confirm some juicy detail. "There is no trouble," I replied, reaching for the light bulbs I needed. "I am just finally using my own front door instead of letting everyone walk through it without knocking." He laughed awkwardly, clearly unsure if I was joking. I was not. The clearest sign of the rumors came that night when Tyler called from Jason's phone. "Grandma," He said, his voice small and worried. "Dad said we might move to Arizona." "Is it because of you?" My heart tightened. "No, sweetie, that is your parents' decision. It has nothing to do with me." "But Dad said—" "Tyler," I interrupted gently. "Sometimes adults blame other people for their own choices because it is easier than taking responsibility. No matter what happens, I want you to know that I love you, and that will not change no matter where you live." "Emma says she is going to stay with you," he said. "Can I stay too?" I hesitated. "That is something you need to talk about with your parents, but my door is always open for you. Always." "Are they fighting a lot?" he admitted. "Mom cries at night when she thinks we are asleep." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words. No matter how justified my actions were, they were having real consequences for the children I loved. "I am sorry you are going through this," I said. "But sometimes families need to go through hard times to get to better ones." After we hung up, I called Janet, needing to vent my frustration. "They are using the kids as emotional pawns," I said, pacing my kitchen. "They are making it seem like I am the villain who is forcing them to move across the country." "Of course they do," Janet replied. "It is the oldest trick in the book. When you cannot win on merits, you appeal to emotion. Do not let it get to you." "Easy to say when it is not your grandchildren being uprooted," I sighed. "They are not being uprooted because of you," Janet reminded me. "They are being uprooted because their parents have been living in a financial fantasy world and reality finally came knocking." She was right, of course, but knowing that did not make it easier to hear the pain in Tyler's voice. Later that night, Martin called. We had been talking regularly since our lunch, and his calm, measured perspective had become a comfort. "You cannot control how they frame this," he said when I told him about the rumors. "But you can control how you respond. Dignity, Catherine. That is your greatest weapon right now." "I am trying," I said. "But it is hard when they are dragging my name through the mud." "The people who know you will not believe it," he assured me, "and those who believe it without asking for your version are not worth worrying about." We talked until almost midnight. We talked about family dynamics, about boundaries, about the courage it takes to stand firm when it would be easier to give in. By the time we said goodnight, I felt more grounded. The next day, I decided to take Martin's advice about dignity to heart. Instead of hiding from the whispers, I went to my regular volunteer shift at the community library. I kept my head high at the grocery store, and I even attended the neighborhood association meeting that I'd been planning to skip. If people were going to talk, let them see me as I was. Not broken, not bitter, just finally standing in my own truth. At the meeting, I ran into Deborah Wilson, an acquaintance who had known Robert well. "Catherine," she said warmly, taking the seat next to me. "It is good to see you. I have been meaning to call." I braced myself for the inevitable questions or veiled references to the family drama. "I saw Jason at the bank yesterday," she continued. "He looked stressed. Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "Things are changing in our family," I said simply. "Change is rarely comfortable." She nodded with understanding in her eyes. "Robert always said you were the backbone of that family. I am glad to see you standing firm." The comment caught me off guard. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Do not look so surprised," she said with a small smile. "Not everyone believes in gossip. Some of us prefer to make our own judgments." It was a small moment, but it reinforced what Martin had said. The people who mattered would see through the noise. That night, I received an unexpected visit. Patricia Lily's sister was at my front door looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" She asked, her tone more conciliatory than it had been at the grocery store. I hesitated. Then I stepped aside. "Of course." She perched on the edge of my sofa, clutching her purse like a shield. "I wanted to apologize for how I spoke to you the other day. I did not have all the facts." "And now you do?" I asked, curious. She nodded. Lily called me crying this morning. They are putting the house on the market and she wanted to know if they could stay with me until they find a place in Arizona. Patricia looked me in the eyes. The thing is, when I asked what happened to all their savings, I know Jason makes good money. She completely broke down. She admitted that they have been living on credit for years. Your support was the only thing keeping them afloat. I sat very still, absorbing this. I see. I always thought Lily was better with money, Patricia continued. She always has the right clothes, the right car. But it turned out it was all smoke and mirrors. She shook her head. I told her they could stay with me, but only if they get financial counseling. I am not going to enable this behavior. The irony was not lost on me. That is very wise of you. Patricia let out a small, sad laugh. I should have listened to you at the store about seeing the whole picture. I am sorry for jumping to conclusions. As she was leaving, she turned back. One more thing. Emma called me. She asked if I would support her staying with you to finish high school. I told her I thought it was a good idea, just so you know. I thanked her for coming and for her honesty. After she left, I sat in my living room processing this new development. Patricia's visit suggested that the tide might be turning, at least in terms of public opinion, but it also confirmed that Jason and Lily's financial situation was even more precarious than I had realized. My phone rang. Martin again. I was wondering if you would like to join me for a concert this weekend, he said. The symphony is playing Brahms. I remember Robert once mentioned that you loved Brahms. The fact that he remembered such a detail moved me deeply. I would love to, I said. Wonderful. I will pick you up at 7 in the evening on Saturday. At 7 it will be. As I hung up, I could not help but marvel at the strange turns life takes. In the middle of the family turmoil, something new and unexpected was blooming. It was as if the space created by withdrawing my support from Jason had allowed other relationships to flourish, with Emma, with Martin, and even in a small way with Patricia. I was still contemplating this when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Jason looking disheveled and defeated. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice raspy. I nodded, leading him into the living room. He collapsed onto the sofa, running his hands through his hair. "We are selling the house," he said without preamble. "We cannot afford it anymore, not without your help." "I know," I said quietly. "Patricia was here a little while ago." He looked up, surprised. "She told you?" "Yes. She also told me that she is making financial counseling a condition for you to stay with her." Jason laughed bitterly. "Yes, it seems everyone has conditions these days." I sat across from him, studying my son. He looked older suddenly, the weight of reality pressing down on him. "Emma wants to stay with you," he said after a moment, "to finish high school." "I know. She asked me. I said yes, if you and Lily agree." He nodded slowly. "Lily thinks it is for the best. One less expense, one less complication." He looked around my living room, his eyes resting on the photos of him and Robert, which still held places of honor. "Will you take care of her? Will you really take care of her?" "Of course I will," I said, surprised by the question. "She is my granddaughter." "I know, but—" He hesitated. "Things between us are so tense. I was not sure." "Jason," I said firmly, "my problems with you and Lily have nothing to do with my love for Emma and Tyler. That has not changed, and it will not change." He nodded again with relief, crossing his features. He stood up, moving toward the door. "Should I go? We have a real estate agent coming to see the house tomorrow." As he reached for the doorknob, I called out to him. Jason turned around. "This is not the end," I said. "It is a reset. Sometimes we need to lose things to discover what truly matters." He did not answer. He just gave a small nod before walking out the door. I stood there for a long time after he left, thinking about resets and second chances. I thought about the difference between helping and enabling. I thought about how sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the exact same thing. Tomorrow, I would call Emma. I would start planning for her to move in. I would need to prepare the guest room and talk to her about house rules and expectations. It would not be easy having a teenager in the house again after so many years, but it felt right. As for Jason and Lily, their path forward was theirs to forge. I could no longer walk it for them, but I could hope that somewhere along the way they would find the clarity I had finally found. The understanding that true value is not measured in what you give or what you have, but in how you live and who you choose to be. The family meeting came sooner than I expected. Emma was the one who tipped me off. She sent me a quick text message on Friday morning. Grandma Mom is planning for everyone to come over on Sunday to clear the air. She says it is about fixing things, but it is definitely about the money. Be ready. I smiled at the screen. Ready? I had been ready since the night of that dinner. When Sunday arrived, I did not rush. I wore what made me feel comfortable, soft wool slacks, a cream-colored sweater, and the necklace Robert had given me on our 25th anniversary. If they were going to confront me, they could do it while looking at a woman who carried herself with dignity. Lily's living room was already full when I walked in, and Jason was sitting stiffly in an armchair with his arms crossed. Lily was on the sofa, flanked by her sister Patricia and two of Jason's cousins. Emma sat near the corner, her eyes meeting mine with a silent warning to stand firm. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. He was probably banished to his room for the duration of the adult conversation. "Catherine," Lily began, gesturing toward an empty chair. "We are glad you could make it. We think it is important to have an open and honest discussion about what has been going on." I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. "By all means." Jason cleared his throat. "Mom, we are worried. The changes you have made, the transfers, the will, everything, they seem extreme. We just want to understand why you are doing this." "You want to understand," I said calmly. "Very well. For years, I have been giving money, time, and help without complaining, without conditions. And throughout those years, I have been met with less and less respect. That ends right now." Patricia leaned forward. "I am sure no one intended to make you feel that way." "Patricia," I interrupted, "whether they intended to or not, it does not change reality. Intentions do not erase actions." Lily's voice was measured, but I could hear the tension. "We are family. Families help each other." "Yes," I said, "families help each other. It is not just one person helping everyone else while being treated like a burden when she has nothing left to give." Jason sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "Mom, you are going to cause a rift that cannot be repaired." "There is already a rift," I replied. "The only difference is that I am no longer pretending it is not there." The room fell silent for a moment. Emma looked at her hands, hiding a small smile. Lily tried one last approach. "If this is about that comment at dinner—" "It is not about one comment," I said. "It is about years of comments, years of expectations, years of being taken for granted. And it is about me deciding that I will not live the rest of my life that way." One of the cousins muttered something under his breath. I did not bother asking him to repeat it. I had already heard enough. "I did not come here to negotiate," I said, standing up. "I came to make it clear that my decisions are final. My finances are mine. My will is mine. And my boundaries are mine. None of those things are open for discussion." Jason's voice hardened. "So that is it. You are just cutting us off." "I am cutting off the behavior that has been bleeding me dry," I said. "If that means certain people see less of me, so be it." I turned to leave. Catching Emma's eye, she gave me the faintest nod. Her face was a careful mask. As I reached the door, Lily's voice followed me sharp now. "You are making a huge mistake, Catherine. One day you will regret this." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "No," I said quietly. "I regret waiting so long." Then I stepped out into the crisp afternoon air. I felt the weight of that room fade with every step toward my car. They had wanted a meeting to force me back into line. Instead, they had gotten a clear answer. I was already gone. I had not gotten very far when I heard footsteps behind me. "Grandma, wait." I turned to see Emma running down the front walkway. Tyler was right behind her. They caught up to me, both slightly out of breath. "I thought you were supposed to stay inside," I said, raising an eyebrow. "I was listening from the stairs," Tyler admitted. "When you left, I told Emma we had to come say a proper goodbye." Emma's eyes were bright with emotion. "You were amazing in there. You did not cave, not even a little bit." "Sometimes standing firm is the only option," I said, gently touching her cheek. Tyler looked back at the house nervously. "They are really mad. Dad's face got all red after you left." "They will get over it," I assured them. "Or they will not. Either way, I will be fine." Emma also glanced back. "I should go back inside, but I wanted to tell you I talked to my high school counselor about staying with you next year. She says it should not be a problem as long as we file the right paperwork. We will figure it out," I promised, "one step at a time." Tyler suddenly threw his arms around my waist. "I wish I could stay with you too," he whispered. I hugged him back, my heart breaking just a little. "I know, sweetie, but you will get to visit us. And who knows, maybe things will be better in Arizona. A fresh start for everyone." As they walked back to the house, I could see Jason standing in the doorway watching us. His expression was unreadable, but he did not try to stop them from saying goodbye. It was a small concession, but perhaps a meaningful one. I drove home with mixed emotions. Pride in myself for standing my ground, sadness for the pain my family was experiencing, hope that someday we could rebuild on healthier ground, and beneath it all, a solid certainty that I had done the right thing, not just for myself, but ultimately for all of us. When I got home, I found a text message from Martin. "How did it go?" I replied to him. "Exactly as expected." "But are you okay?" "Better than okay." His response came quickly. "I never doubted it. Dinner is still on for tonight." I smiled. "Absolutely. I could use some good company." As I got ready for my evening with Martin, I thought about the concept of family. How can it be both our greatest source of pain and our greatest source of strength? How is it that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no? And how even in our 70s, life can surprise us with new beginnings when we least expect them. Sunday's meeting had been a turning point, not an ending. What happened next would depend on choices. My choices, Jason's choices, Lily's choices. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was writing my own story, instead of serving as a footnote in someone else's. Sunday's meeting left a residue, not the kind that sticks in guilt or doubt, but the kind that reminds you exactly why you made your decision in the first place. On Monday morning, I woke up in a house that felt unusually light. It was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle rustling of the maple tree outside my bedroom window. I made coffee, spread butter on a slice of toast, and realized that for the first time in years, I did not have to check my calendar to see which of their errands I was expected to run. By mid-morning, I drove to the community center for my volunteer shift at the library. I sorted books and helped an older gentleman find a large print copy of his favorite mystery novel. It was simple, satisfying work, and not once did I feel like someone was waiting for me to finish so they could ask me for something. Janet dropped by near the end of my shift. "I heard about your big showdown on Sunday," she said with a grin. "Patricia's version of events made it sound like you walked out of there with flames shooting from your ears." I laughed. If standing up and speaking the truth counts as a stormy exit, then yes, I suppose I did. "You are not upset, one bit," I said. "I told them my decisions are final. Whether they believe me or not is not my concern." When I got home, I found a small envelope tucked into my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note in Emma's familiar handwriting. "Proud of you. Do not let them wear you down. Dinner soon my treat." I smiled so widely that my cheeks hurt. It was not about the money, though I knew her treating me to dinner would probably mean a modest coffee. It was the intention. She understood that this was about more than finances. It was about self-respect. That night, I took a long bath, the kind where you let the water turn lukewarm before finally getting out. I put on fresh pajamas, brewed a cup of chamomile tea, and sat in my favorite armchair by the window. The phone rang twice. Jason both times. I let it go to voicemail, not even bothering to listen. I had learned that not all calls deserved an answer, and not all crises were mine to solve. Later, I wrote in my journal something I had not done in years. Day 1 without apologies. Day 1 of choosing myself first. I was surprised by how strange it felt to consider myself without first measuring what someone else needed from me. When I finally went to bed, I lay there thinking about how they might try again. Another meeting, more gossip, maybe even a peace offering designed to pull me back into the same old patterns. But I also thought about something my grandmother used to say. Once you have closed your door, no matter how many times someone knocks, you choose whether to open it. And my door for now would remain closed. A week passed after the Sunday meeting, and the storm finally began to lose some of its strength. The phone still rang every couple of days, but the frequency was decreasing. Jason's text messages had gone from, "We need to talk," to "Can we try again?" and finally to silence. Lily had not shown up in person since that morning in my driveway, and for that I was grateful. Emma visited on Saturday afternoon. She walked in without knocking, carrying a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. "From that bakery you like," she said, pulling out 2 still warm apple turnovers. We ate them at the kitchen table, the flaky pastry scattering crumbs between us. She told me about her classes, her plans for college, and the part-time job she had just gotten at the bookstore. "They are not happy with me," she admitted after a while, for not taking sides, but I told them I was taking a side, yours. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I am not asking you to choose between us, Emma." "I know," she said, "but you are the only one who treats me like I can think for myself, and I do not like how they talk about you." "People talk," I said. "They have always talked. The important thing is that you know the truth and I know the truth. That is enough for me." She smiled, but it did not quite reach her eyes. I could see the weight she was carrying. The tension of being caught between loyalty to her parents and respect for her grandmother. I did not want her to carry it forever. "There is news," she said, changing the subject. "It is official. We are moving to Arizona. The house is under contract and Dad is already looking for work there." I nodded, having expected it. "When? 2 weeks. They want to be there before the next school term starts for Tyler." She looked down at her napkin, folding it meticulously. "I have talked to them about staying here with you. They agreed, as long as we file the right paperwork with the high school." "And how do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. "Honestly?" Her eyes met mine, relieved but also guilty, like I am abandoning Tyler. "You are not abandoning anyone," I assured her. "You are making the best choice for your future. Tyler will understand." "He already does," she said. "He told me that, and I quote, he would totally choose to stay with Grandma too if he could." I laughed, though my heart ached for my youngest grandson. "He is welcome to visit whenever he wants. You both are." After she left, I sat in my garden watching the late afternoon light filter through the trees. The failure of Lily's business was not my doing, but I could not help feeling a twinge of sympathy. I knew what it was like to watch something you had built fall apart. The difference was that I had had Robert to support me when times were tough. Lily had Jason, but from what I could see, he was barely keeping himself afloat. The sound of a car pulling into my driveway pulled me from my thoughts. Martin's sedan had made a habit of stopping by unannounced occasionally, always with some small offering. Fresh bread from the bakery, a book he thought I would enjoy, once even a potted orchid because it reminded him of me elegant and resilient. Today he carried a bottle of wine and a smile that warmed me from the inside out. "I hope I am not intruding," he said, though he knew he never was. "You are just in time to watch the sunset," I replied, guiding him through the garden. We sat side by side in the Adirondack chairs that Robert had built decades ago. We sipped wine as the sky faded from blue to pink to deep purple. Martin's hand found mine in the growing darkness, and neither of us felt the need to speak. It was a different kind of comfort than I had known before, not the familiar ease of a decades-long marriage, but the quiet thrill of something new and unexpected blooming late in life. Later, during a simple dinner, I insisted on cooking. He told me about his day. He talked about the memoirs he was writing and about the hiking trip he was planning for the fall. "I would like you to join me," he said, looking slightly nervous. "Just a weekend in the mountains. Separate rooms, of course, if you prefer." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, ridiculous at my age. I would love to. When he was leaving, he kissed me. A soft, questioning kiss that left room for me to pull away if I wanted to. I did not want to. "Catherine," he said softly, "I have waited a long time for this, for you." "I did not know I was waiting," I admitted, "but I am glad I found you anyway." After he left, I sat on my porch, marveling at the strange turns life takes. In the span of a few weeks, I had lost some things I thought were fixed and gained others I never expected. It felt like a door had opened, not just to Martin, but to a version of myself I had forgotten was possible. My phone vibrated with a text message from Jason. "Mom, we need to talk in person before we leave, please." I stared at the message, considering. The old me would have replied immediately, ready to smooth things over. The new me took her time weighing what I wanted against what might be expected. Finally, I typed Tuesday 2 in the afternoon, my house. His reply came quickly. "Thank you, I will be there." I set down the phone, feeling neither dread nor anticipation, just a quiet readiness. Whatever Jason wanted to discuss, I would listen, but I would not bend, not anymore. Tuesday arrived with a steady rain that tapped against the windows and turned the outside world into a blur of grays and greens. I spent the morning baking, not for Jason, but because the rhythm of measuring, mixing, and kneading helped me think. By the time the clock neared 2 in the afternoon, the house was filled with the warm scent of fresh bread, and my mind was clear. Jason arrived punctually with the rain dripping from his coat as he stepped inside. He looked thinner than I remembered. The strain of the recent weeks was evident in the shadows under his eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. His voice was formal, almost like a stranger's. "Of course," I replied, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Would you like some tea? I just made bread." He followed me, taking off his wet coat and hanging it carefully over a kitchen chair. "That smells like when I was a kid," he said, a touch of nostalgia softening his features. "Did you used to bake every Sunday?" "Some habits are worth keeping," I said, cutting thick slices and placing them on a plate with butter and honey. "Others, not so much." He accepted the offering with a small nod. For a few minutes, we sat in silence. The rain provided a gentle backdrop to our unspoken thoughts. Finally, Jason set down his tea. "We leave on Friday," he said. "The house closing is on Thursday." "Emma told me," I replied. "She also told me she is staying here." "Yes." He looked at his hands. "That is part of what I wanted to discuss. The high school paperwork, the logistics, that kind of thing." I waited, sensing there was more. "But mostly," he continued, "I wanted to say, I am sorry." The words hung in the air between us, simple but heavy. "I have been thinking a lot," he continued when I did not reply immediately, "about how we got here, about the way Lily and I have treated you, about the money, yes, but more than that, the respect." He looked me straight in the eyes for the first time, or the lack of it. "I appreciate that," I said carefully, "but an apology only matters if it leads to change." "I know." He broke off a piece of bread, turning it over in his fingers without eating it. "That is why we are going to Arizona. It is not just about Lily's sister offering us a place to stay. It is about starting over, living within our means, and learning to stand on our own 2 feet. That sounds like a good plan, I said, genuinely impressed by his self-awareness. It is overdue, he admitted. Long overdue, and I cannot promise we will get it right immediately, but I want to try, for myself, for the kids, and... He hesitated. For you, because you deserve better than what we have given you. I felt a sudden lump in my throat. This was what I had wanted to hear for years, but now that the words were finally being spoken, I found myself wary of their weight. Jason, I said softly, I appreciate what you are saying, but trust needs to be rebuilt over time, not just with words. I know, he said quickly. I am not asking for anything. No money, no forgiveness, not even understanding. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, what we did, how we made you feel, and I am going to work on being better. I studied my son's face, the face I had known since his first breath through scraped knees and graduation caps, wedding vows, and the birth of his own children. I saw sincerity there, and humility, and a kind of raw vulnerability I had not witnessed since he was very young. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. It means a lot to hear you say that. Relief crossed his features. I was afraid you would not even let me through the door. I would not have a few weeks ago, I admitted. But I am learning about boundaries too. Yes, but also about leaving room for people to change. We talked for another hour about Emma's arrangements. We talked about his job prospects in Arizona and about Tyler's adjustment to the move. The conversation had an ease that had been missing for years, perhaps because for the first time in a long time, he was not asking me for anything. As he prepared to leave, I found myself saying, "You know your father would be proud of you right now." Jason's eyes widened slightly. Really, even after everything? Not for the mistakes, I clarified, but for facing them head on, for being willing to start over. That takes courage. He blinked rapidly, emotion crossing his face. Thank you, Mom. That means a lot. At the door, he turned back. Lily wants to see you too. Before we leave, would that be all right? I hesitated, then nodded. Tell her to come tomorrow at the same time. After he left, I stood by the window watching him drive away in the rain. The visit had gone better than I expected. There was no manipulation, no veiled requests, just a simple acknowledgement of the mistake and a commitment to do better. It was not everything, but it was a start. The next day dawned clear and bright, as if the rain had washed away more than just dust from the air. I spent the morning in my garden planting the autumn bulbs that would bloom next spring, a small act of faith in the future. Lily arrived promptly at 2 p.m, just as Jason had done. But unlike his hesitant approach, she walked up my driveway with the confident air that had always been her trademark. Only the slight tension around her mouth betrayed any nervousness. "Catherine," she said when I opened the door, "thank you for agreeing to see me." She wore a simple blouse and jeans. It was far from her usual designer outfits, and her hair was pulled back into a practical ponytail. The change in appearance was striking, but I kept my observations to myself as I guided her inside. We settled in the living room. The formality of the kitchen suddenly felt too intimate for this conversation. "Jason told me you had a good talk yesterday," she began. "We did," I confirmed. "He seems to be approaching this move with a positive attitude." Lily nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It has been a wake-up call for both of us, the house, the finances, everything." I waited, allowing her the space to continue. "I wanted to tell you," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "that I understand now why you did what you did, cutting us off financially. I mean, it was not just about the money, was it?" "No," I said simply. "It was not." She took a deep breath. "I said terrible things to you that night at dinner, and many times before that I treated you as if you did not matter, as if your only value was what you could give us." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I was wrong, and I am deeply sorry." The apology seemed genuine, which surprised me. Lily had always struck me as someone who would rather die than admit a fault. "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. A sad smile crossed her face. "My entire business failed completely. The house is gone. My sister is making us attend financial counseling, and my daughter chose to stay with you instead of coming with us." She shook her head. "When you lose so much so quickly, it forces you to look at yourself. Really look." "And what did you see?" I pressed gently. "Someone I did not like very much." She admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone entitled, ungrateful, and frankly cruel at times." She wiped away a tear that had escaped. "I do not want to be that person anymore, for Emma and Tyler's sake and for my own." I felt an unexpected surge of compassion. Whatever my issues with Lily were, I recognized the genuine pain of self-realization. It was not an easy process for anyone. "I believe you," I said finally, "and I appreciate your honesty." She seemed to relax slightly at my words. "I do not expect forgiveness immediately or maybe ever, but I wanted you to know that I see what I did wrong and I am committed to changing it." "That is all any of us can do," I said. "Acknowledge our mistakes and try to do better." As she prepared to leave, Lily hesitated. "There is one more thing," she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small velvet box. "This was your mother's, I believe. Jason found it when we were packing." She handed me the box. When I opened it, I found my mother's pearl earrings. They were the ones I had thought were lost years ago when I lent them to Lily for a business function. "I should have returned them sooner," she said quietly. "I am sorry I did not." The gesture, small as it was, moved me more than her words. It was tangible proof of a willingness to make amends. "Thank you," I said, closing my hand around the box. "These mean a lot to me." After she left, I sat holding the earrings. I thought about forgiveness and new beginnings. I was not ready to forget everything that had happened, but I could acknowledge the effort they were making now. It was a start, if nothing else. The day of Jason and Lily's departure arrived with a mix of emotions I had not fully anticipated. I had spent the morning helping Emma pack her essential belongings for the move to my house. We were packing clothes books and the collection of small treasures that marked her journey from a little girl to a young woman. "Are you sure you do not want to go to the airport?" I asked as we taped up the last box. "To say goodbye?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "We already said our goodbyes last night. It was hard. I do not think I can do it twice." I nodded, understanding. "They will come back to visit and you can go see them during school breaks." "I know." She sat on the edge of her bare bed, looking around the room that had been hers since childhood. It is just weird, everything changing so fast. I sat down next to her, letting the silence settle between us. "Change is rarely comfortable," I said finally, "but that does not mean it is not necessary." She leaned against my shoulder, a gesture so reminiscent of her childhood that my heart tightened. "I am glad I am staying with you, Grandma." "Me too, honey. Me too." We finished loading the boxes into my car and took one last walk through the empty house. The furniture was gone sold to help fund the move. The walls were bare where family photos had once hung. It felt hollow, a shell of the home it had once been. As we were leaving, Emma's phone rang. "It is Dad," she said, answering quickly. "Hi, what is wrong? Are you not supposed to be boarding soon?" Her expression changed as she listened. "Oh, okay. Yes, she is right here." She held out the phone to me. "He wants to talk to you. He says it is important." I took the phone, curious. "Jason, it is Mom." His voice sounded strained. "I know this is last minute, but would you come to the airport? Tyler is having a really hard time. He keeps asking for you." I looked at my watch. Their flight was in less than 2 hours. "I will be there as soon as I can," I promised. Emma and I drove to the airport in record time. We navigated the parking lot and terminal with the urgency of people on a mission. We found them at the gate. Tyler was sitting apart from his parents. His face was tear-stained and defiant. When he saw us, he jumped up and ran straight toward me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Grandma, you came?" "Of course I did," I said, holding him close. "What is this I hear about you being upset?" He looked up at me, his eyes red from crying. "I do not want to go. I want to stay with you and Emma. It is not fair." I guided him to a quiet corner, sitting beside him, while Emma went to talk to their parents. "I know it feels unfair," I said gently, "but sometimes families need to make tough decisions. Your mom and dad are trying to make a fresh start, and they need you with them." "But they did not need Emma," he argued. "She gets to stay." "Emma is 17 years old, almost 18, I reminded him. "She is finishing her senior year of high school, but you are 12 years old. You still need your parents in a different way." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I am not a baby." "No, you are not," I agreed. "You are a very mature young man. That is why I need you to be brave right now." "I do not feel brave," he admitted. "The bravest people often do not feel it," I said, "but they do what needs to be done anyway." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small package I had been saving for Emma to give him later. "I have something for you. It was going to be a surprise for when you landed in Arizona, but I think you need it now." He unwrapped it carefully. A smartphone. It was newer and better than the basic one Jason and Lily had allowed him. "Your very own phone," I explained, "so you can call, text, or video chat with me whenever you want, without asking for permission, without borrowing someone else's. Just you and me whenever you need to talk." His eyes widened. "Really, my own phone?" "Really," I confirmed. "I have already programmed my number, Emma's, and a few others. It is paid for the next year, so your parents do not have to worry about the bill." He looked from the phone to me, a slow smile replacing the tears. "This is amazing. Grandma, thank you." "You are welcome. Now I need you to do something for me." "What?" he asked. "I need you to give Arizona a real chance. Make friends, try new things. Help your parents. Can you do that?" He nodded solemnly. "I will try, for you." "Not for me," I corrected. "For yourself. Because that is how you grow." We rejoined the others. Tyler proudly showed his new phone to Emma while Jason and Lily walked over to me. "Thank you for coming," Jason said. "And for—" He gestured toward Tyler. "Whatever you said to him." "And the phone," Lily added. "Even though you did not have to do that." "I wanted to," I said simply. "He needs to know he has not lost his connection to me just because you are moving." An announcement played over the loudspeakers. Their flight was beginning to board. "That is ours," Jason said. He hesitated, then gave me an awkward hug. "We will call when we land." Lily stepped forward next. Her hug was less hesitant than Jason's. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, even the hard parts." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Despite everything, they were still my family, and watching them leave was harder than I had expected. Tyler gave me one last fierce hug. "I will call you tonight, Grandma, I promise." "I will be waiting," I assured him. We stood at the gate, Emma's hand in mine as they disappeared down the jet bridge, a chapter closing a new one, beginning. It was not what any of us had planned, but perhaps it was what we all needed. As we walked back to the car, Emma said, "That was really nice what you did for Tyler. The phone, I mean. He needs to feel connected." "To us here," I said. "It will make the transition easier." She nodded thoughtfully. "You know, for someone who just started setting boundaries, you are still really good at taking care of people." I smiled. There is a difference between being taken advantage of and choosing to give. One drains you, the other fills you. I think I am just starting to understand that. "I agree," she admitted. We drove home. To my house, which was now Emma's too, in a comfortable silence. The house felt different knowing she would be staying, not just visiting. Fuller, more alive somehow. "Which room do you want?" I asked as we carried the first of her boxes inside. "The blue one faces the garden, but the yellow one gets the morning sun." "The blue one," she decided. "I like seeing the garden." We spent the afternoon getting her settled. We unpacked clothes into drawers, organized books on shelves, and placed her favorite photographs on the nightstand. It felt good to have her there. Not a replacement for the family that had moved away, but a continuation, a new branch growing from the same tree. That evening, as promised, Tyler called. He was excited, full of stories about the flight to the airport in Arizona and the swimming pool at his aunt's house. The sadness of the morning seemed to have dissipated, at least temporarily, replaced by the natural resilience of childhood. After hanging up, Emma and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta with garlic bread and a simple salad. We ate at the kitchen table, talking about her school schedule, her job at the bookstore, and the ground rules for living together. "I want you to feel at home here," I told her. "But there will be some expectations. Keeping your room reasonably tidy, letting me know where you are, that sort of thing." "That is fair," she agreed. "And I want to help around the house. Cooking, cleaning, whatever you need." "We will figure it out as we go," I said. "Neither of us has done this before." Later, as we were sitting down, watching a movie in the living room, Emma turned to me. "Grandma, do you think Mom and Dad will be okay?" I considered the question carefully. "I think they have a chance to be. They are facing their mistakes, taking responsibility. That is a good start." "And will we be okay?" I put my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We already are okay. Different, maybe, from what we expected, but okay." She seemed satisfied with that answer, turning her attention back to the movie. But I found myself reflecting on her question long after she had gone to bed. We would all be okay. Jason and Lily in Arizona starting over, Tyler adjusting to a new home, a new middle school, new friends, Emma here with me navigating her senior year of high school and the transition into adulthood, and me balancing my newfound independence with my evolving role in their lives. I did not have all the answers, but I had hope, and that was enough for now. 3 months passed in a blur of adjustments and new routines. Emma settled into life at my house with surprising ease. Her presence brought an energy and vitality that I had not realized I had been missing. We developed our own rhythms. Morning coffee shared over the newspaper. She read the arts section, I took the news and editorials. Evening meals where we discussed our days. Weekend outings to bookstores and farmers markets. She had her moments of teenage moodiness, of course, and I had to remind myself not to hover or impose too many rules. We were both learning on the fly, finding the balance between her independence and my authority. Tyler called almost daily at first. Then he settled into a pattern of video calls twice a week that became a highlight for us both. He was adapting well to Arizona. He was making friends at his new school and joining a baseball team. His initial resistance to the move had faded. It was replaced by the natural adaptability of youth. Jason and Lily were slower to find their way. The financial counseling Patricia had insisted upon was bringing long-buried issues to the surface. It was creating tensions, even as it forced them to confront unhealthy patterns. Jason had found a job, but at a significantly lower salary than he had earned before. Lily was taking classes at the community college. It was a step toward rebuilding her career on a more solid foundation. Our communications were cautious at first. Brief text messages, occasional phone calls that stuck to safe topics, like the kids and the weather. But gradually, a new kind of relationship began to emerge. Not the old dynamic of dependence and resentment, but something more balanced, more honest. Martin had become a constant presence in my life. Our relationship deepened with every passing week. We had taken that weekend trip to the mountains he had suggested. The separate rooms became a technicality by the second night. At 73 years old, I had discovered that romance does not age. It only changes shape. It was less about breathless passion and more about deep connection and the comfort of being truly seen. Emma teased me about my boyfriend, but I could tell she approved. She had even started calling him Dr. Martin with a warmth that suggested she saw him as more than just my companion. On a crisp autumn day, I found myself sitting in my garden with Janet. We watched the leaves turn from green to gold on the old maple tree. "So," she said, sipping her tea, 3 months. How is the boundary experiment going? I laughed at her characterization. Hardly an experiment anymore, more like a new way of living. And is it everything you hoped for? I considered the question, watching a cardinal hop between branches. It is different than I expected. When I first stood up to them, I thought it was just about the money, about not being taken for granted, but it has become so much more than that. Just as Janet had encouraged me, it forced us all to see each other clearly. Maybe for the first time in years, Jason and Lily had to face their financial reality. I had to acknowledge my own role in enabling their behavior. Even the kids had to adjust their expectations. Janet nodded thoughtfully. It sounds like everyone grew up a little bit. Even the 73-year-old grandmother. I agreed with a smile. Speaking of growing up, Janet said, changing the subject, Emma tells me you are thinking about going back to school. I felt a flush of embarrassment. It is just an idea. The community college offers art classes for seniors. I always wanted to learn watercolor painting. Catherine Brooks, Renaissance woman, Janet joked. Art classes, a new boyfriend, a teenage roommate. Who are you, and what have you done with my predictable friend? We both laughed, but her words resonated with me. Who was I now? Not just Robert's widow, not just Jason's mother, not just Emma and Tyler's grandmother. I was Catherine, with my own desires, my own boundaries, my own life to live. The sound of a car pulling into my driveway interrupted our conversation. Emma was back from her shift at the bookstore. "Grandma," she called out, hurrying around the side of the house, "you are not going to believe who just walked into the store." She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw Janet. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Wallace. Sorry for interrupting." "Not at all, dear," Janet said, waving off her apology. "What is all the excitement about?" Emma plopped down into the third garden chair. Her eyes were bright with news. "Lily called the store. She published an article in some business magazine about small business failures and what she learned from hers. She wanted me to tell you. Grandma, she said she would send you a copy if you want to read it." I raised my eyebrows, genuinely surprised. That is unexpected. "She sounded different," Emma continued. "More, I do not know. Humble. She asked about you, how you were doing. Not in a nosy way, just like she really wanted to know." "What did you tell her?" I asked. Emma grinned. "That you are painting, dating a doctor, and generally living your best life." Janet snorted with a laugh. "Well, she is not wrong." I shook my head, smiling despite myself. "You could have mentioned that the doctor is 75 years old and that the painting is strictly amateur." "Details," Emma said, waving her hand dismissively. "The point is that you are happy, and I think she was glad to hear it." Later that evening, after Janet had gone home and Emma had retreated to her room to study, I found myself on the porch swing that Robert had hung decades ago. The night was cool, but not cold. The sky was clear and full of stars. My phone vibrated with a text message from Lily. "Emma mentioned you were taking art classes. That is wonderful. I remember you used to draw when Jason was little. You were good." I stared at the message. I was surprised she remembered something so inconsequential from so many years ago. After a moment, I replied, "Just starting classes next week. You are never too old to learn something new." Her response came quickly. "You are never too old to start over either. We are proof of that." A strange sense of peace settled over me as I put the phone away. Not forgiveness, exactly. That would take more time and more evidence of lasting change, but a kind of acceptance, an acknowledgement that we were all works in progress even at our age. Martin called just as I was heading inside. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked, his voice warm even through the phone. "I would love to," I said. "But could we make it lunch instead? Emma and I are having dinner with Tyler. Well, virtually. It is our new tradition. Sunday family dinner via video chat." "Family dinner," he repeated. "That sounds wonderful. Lunch it will be." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table looking around the home that had witnessed so much of my life. The photographs on the walls told the story. Robert and I on our wedding day, Jason growing from a toddler to a teenager to a man, Emma and Tyler as babies as children, and now Emma as a young woman on the verge of adulthood. But there were also newer additions. A photo of Martin and me at the symphony, a watercolor postcard I had painted in my first class, a handmade ceramic mug that Emma had bought me at the farmer's market, because it looked like something a cool grandma would use. My life had changed, expanded in ways I could not have imagined that night at the dinner table, when Lily's cruel joke had awakened something in me, something that had been dormant for far too long, the steak, the dog, the line I had not realized I was waiting to cross. They seemed so important at the time, and they were, as catalysts, but the real change had come later, in the quiet moments of choosing myself, of standing firm, of believing I deserved better. Sunday evening arrived, and Emma and I set the dining room table as if our guests were going to be physically present. Placemats, nice plates, even flowers in the center. We placed the tablet at the third setting. Tyler's eager face appeared right on time. "Grandma Emma, guess what? I made the honor roll, and the coach says I might pitch in the next game." His enthusiasm was contagious. His adjustment to Arizona was more complete than any of us had expected. Jason and Lily joined the call a few minutes later. They looked tired but content in a way they had not been before. We ate our respective dinners, lasagna on our end, something with green chilies on theirs, and we talked about ordinary things, Tyler's middle school projects, Emma's college applications, Jason's new job, Lily's classes. The conversation flowed easily. It lacked the undercurrents of resentment that had characterized our interactions for so long. As we were saying goodbye, Lily said, "Catherine, thank you." "For what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "For the wake-up call," she said simply. "We needed it more than we knew." After the call ended, Emma helped me clear the table. Both of us were quiet with our thoughts. "That was nice," she said finally. "Almost normal." "Almost," I agreed. "But maybe a better normal than before." She nodded, understanding. "Do you think we will ever be a normal family again? You know, holidays together, that kind of thing." I considered her question carefully. "I think we will be something different, not what we were, but maybe something stronger, more honest." "I would like that," she said softly. "Me too," I admitted. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, I found myself thinking about the concept of rebuilding, how sometimes you need to tear down old structures before you can create new ones, how the process is rarely neat or painless, but necessary nonetheless. My stand at the dinner table months ago had not just been about an insult or even years of disrespect. It had been about recognizing my own worth, about refusing to let others define my value, and in doing so, I had started a chain reaction that was still unfolding, changing not just my life, but the lives of everyone connected to me. I did not know exactly what the future would hold, whether Jason and Lily would maintain their newfound awareness or revert to old patterns, whether Emma would remain close as she moved into adulthood, whether my relationship with Martin would continue to deepen or find its natural conclusion. But I did know one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again let someone else determine my value. I would never again swallow insults with my dinner. I would never again shrink myself to make room for someone else's entitlement. That night at the dinner table, when I took the steak from Lily and gave it to the dog, I was not just standing up to her. I was standing up for myself. And in that moment, I found a strength I did not know I possessed. A strength that it turned out had been there all along, just waiting for me to claim it. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Have you ever gone through something similar? Comment below. And if you enjoyed my story, check out 2 other favorites from the channel. My son-in-law mocked my birthday gift until he saw the house deed inside, and I pretended not to recognize my daughter at her fancy job after she ignored me in public.